I'm Charlotte McLeod with investingnews.com, and here today with me is Lynette Zang, founder and CEO of Zang Enterprises. Thank you so much for being here. Always great to catch up with you.
Absolutely, Charlotte. It's very happy to be here. There's so much to talk about.
Yes, I was looking back to see when we last spoke, and it was all the way back in January here in Vancouver at VRIC. So certainly a lot has happened since then. And where I thought it would be appropriate to start is with gold and silver prices. So we're in the midst of a historic run, especially today. I saw gold over 4,000, silver above 49 on the spot prices. And I wanted to pose the question to you. What are these high prices telling us about the world today?
Wow, that's a great question. And what it is in the loss of confidence in the system and in the money system on a global basis. And so, yeah, you are seeing the spot prices surge. What's really interesting, particularly with silver, is if you go all the way back to the 80s, we are now concluding a major double cup formation, which frankly, I don't think I've ever seen before. It's crazy. You can look on the chart and see it's just this huge double cup from I think 81 or something like that until 2011 or 13, something like that. And now the next cup concluding. This is major. Once you see spot silver go above that $50, which it could be happening while we're talking right now, it's that close. But once you see that breakout, then technically I would expect a bigger surge in the spot silver price.
You're right. It could be happening as we speak. We'll try to be fast on posting this interview so that it isn't outdated too quickly. So maybe a little bit more on what's going on with the prices, because we are at these unprecedented levels. I know if we look long term, you have pretty high expectations for where gold and silver prices could go. But if we're looking, say we're looking at till the end of 2025, what do you see coming?
Well, quite honestly, Charlotte, I believe that we are in the melt-up phase of these markets where no matter what happens, you're just seeing surges. And you're seeing that in the stock markets as well as the crypto markets. And the interesting thing, though, right now, if you go back to the beginning of the year, what you actually see is that while everything is going up, the spot contracts on gold and silver, and particularly silver, are much stronger and more powerful than those prices that we're seeing in the stock market or even in the Bitcoin market, in the crypto markets. Gold and silver are handily outperforming. And that's telling us that what the central banks that have been accumulating more gold than they ever have since they began tracking, because they know what they're doing to destroy the currencies. And I saw this yesterday morning on Bloomberg now, where they were touting the devaluation trade. So that means that destroying the value of the currency, the purchasing power value of the currency, is now a good thing. It isn't a good thing. But the fact that they're touting that blows my mind, because they don't really want the public to understand that this inflation and this devaluation is really not necessary. But that's how far the markets have been degraded, and the currency markets have been degraded. And so this surge in both the spot prices on gold and silver is a huge indication of that.
I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about what's happening with the stock market, because you're right, we see it continuing to go as we have gold and silver also running higher. And I think that's just unexpected for a lot of people. They don't think that this is something that we would see usually. So when does that end? When does the stock market make a reversal? What are you seeing?
Well, if I'm right, and what time is going to tell, I'm either going to be right or wrong, but if I'm right, and if this is indeed the melt up part of this phase, then I will expect everything to continue to climb because this is the end game for the fiat currencies. And the only tool that they have is, they want more debasement. And it really is an indication when they're talking about that as a good thing, a debasement trade. Are you kidding me? Oh my God. I mean, people don't realize how significant that is. But, the U.S. is now in a government shutdown. And there is even discussion as to whether or not the furloughed employees would be getting their back pay, and yet the stock markets are surging higher. Well, it certainly makes sense with all that uncertainty for the spot gold and silver markets to surge higher. But again, not the stock markets. That, of course, is because we are at the end of this currency's life cycle. And now the markets are believing it. I can't even stress how important Wall Street touting the devaluation trade is, as so blatant, so incredibly blatant. It's kind of mind-blowing.
It really sounds, based on what you're saying, like that we're entering this new phase of that currency transition. And it ties into something else I wanted to ask you about, because we've been talking about this for quite some time. If we look at the timeline of that, where would you place us? I know that it's always difficult to get the timing, but any rough idea?
Well, I would say we're very close. And the other part of that, which is a huge part of that, so a part of the timing is going to be dependent upon the execution. But recently, President Trump signed the Genius Act, which legalized the stablecoins. And so what nobody seems to really understand, but I'm old enough to have lived through it. And again, I could be wrong, but I'd bet anything on this, quite honestly. When he signed that, he changed the global monetary system. Because remember, in the 70s and the 60s and the 70s, when the U.S. was losing the status as the world reserve currency, well, they had to create a new artificial market for dollars. And so Henry Kissinger went to Saudi Arabia and created the petrodollar, and that created that artificial market. But frankly, since 2013, actually since 2008, it was generally the banks and the governments that were big buyers of treasuries. So first, during the financial crisis, which is, in my opinion, when the system actually died and then was put on life support, you have been losing the traditional buyers of treasuries. And 2013 was when the two biggest global buyers, China and Japan, of treasuries started reducing their buying and their holdings of treasuries. And we're at a point now where we needed to create a new artificial market for dollars. And so with President Trump signing the Genius Act and requiring it's corporations that actually create stable coins, and if they're dollar backed, then that's on a one-to-one basis. So you have, say, an entity like Amazon that will have their own stable coins and create their own infrastructure for that. You and me would take dollars, buy their stable coins, but as soon as they create those stable coins, they have to go buy treasuries on a one-to-one basis to back it. So that is a new artificial market, and it ain't over yet, because there is nowhere where it's said that the U.S. is the only entity that can create stable coins. So you have Hong Kong doing it with Hong Kong dollars. You can have it's going to be very, very fragmented market, because any corporation can issue stable coins. There are very minimum requirements to be met. But I know in the times we've had so many interviews, and I know that we've talked about, well, what's going to justify the creation of this new money? And you might recall, said in all of the reading that I've done, it was either debt, so they have to get rid of the mountain of debt that's not payable in order to do that, or purchases. Those were the two things that kept coming up. Well, guess what? With the signing of the stablecoin bill, my long-term question has now been answered, and it is a combination of purchases and debt. And I believe that that can push us into the hyperinflation that we need to finish off the current system and usher in the new system. And that is going back to why you see, number one, global central banks buying more gold than they ever have since they started tracking it historically, and also why you see the surge in the spot prices, because smart money is getting into gold and silver. But, gold is the primary currency metal. Silver is the secondary currency metal. And the current monetary system, it is falling apart when you see Wall Street touting the devaluation trade. Devaluation means that they're going to do this until the currency you can't buy anything with it, just like my $10 trillion Zimbabwe note. I can't buy anything with it. It's got lots of zeros on it, though.
I think this is a really important direction to go in. And I want to get a little bit back to the basics on stablecoins, because it sounds, just based on what you're saying, we need to know what's happening here. And our audience, very focused on precious metals, maybe a little bit less informed about this part of the market, they might be wondering, okay, what actually is this? How does it compare to cryptocurrencies? So what could you say there?
I would say that it's a backdoor way to get involved in the CBDCs, but it will be corporations and AI that will be manipulating what you do. And again, what justifies this money creation? They're named stable coins, but they're backed by dollars. Well, in this country, and actually in a lot in South Africa and a lot around the world, most of the stable coins that are issued are dollar stable coins, but that means that they go the way of the dollar, right? And it's relative wherever you are in the world. So the dollar isn't stronger. The dollar is losing purchasing power. It's just losing it a little bit more slowly than other currencies, but they're all losing all of their value. It's the end. I don't like to say that, but you can't bury your head in the sand, because ignorance doesn't make you immune. It just leaves you vulnerable. And good that your viewers are loading up on, it's got to be physical. It's got to be physical.
Absolutely. All right. So the stable coins, they're coming in as a buyer of treasuries, as I understand from what you're saying. And yes. I think you also mentioned, so the central banks now, they've passed the point where they own more gold than treasuries. So to what extent can these stable coins kind of mop up that treasury excess? How does this play out?
Well, there's your hyperinflation, isn't it? Because if everybody is encouraged to use stable coins, and remember, it's the corporations, so it's the big box stores, it's the Amazons, it's the Walmarts, it's the Costcos. It can be states, it can be other countries, right? So we will see a plethora of stablecoin issuance from all these different entities, which means it's fragmented, which means it's fragile, right? And because it's going to be based on purchases, and AI has seeped into everything, and people, they seem to be more and more dependent on AI. I just read an article recently on Grok AI, which is Elon Musk's AI, and how he is building it in his thought process. So people need to not depend on that. But you take the psychology, which AI knows how you think and what they need to say to you to nudge you in that direction. That's called perspective management, or perception management rather, on steroids. And we will be buying. We are a consumer-driven economy. All over the world, that's what they've been pushing for, even places that aren't quite that yet. But in advanced economies, we are consumers. So we will consume us into that hyperinflation. And then, of course, we lose everything. But, and that's why gold and silver in your possession is so critical at this point. But make no mistake, the monetary system is changed, whether you see it at this moment or you don't. If it was that black and white, you'd know that things have changed and you would make changes. So it always has to be subtle, and it always has to get your adoption and make you think like nothing has changed, when in reality, everything has changed.
100%. And one more question on the note of stable coins. This is very fascinating, just so I understand. So the companies making them, is this a case where in the future we might see something like, all right, Amazon creates a stable coin, and if you want to shop on Amazon, as so many people do, you have to be using your Amazon stable coin?
That is exactly right, Charlotte. Exactly right.
Very alarming, because of course you need to use these things, and it's so hard to extract yourself from those systems that you're using every day.
Oh, it is. I mean, they get you addicted to the systems. And, this current system picks winners and losers. This is not a democracy. We think, and this is not a capitalist system, because we think in a capitalist system that if you make stupid mistakes and you fail, you should fail. But as we've seen over and over and over again, those entities that are too big to fail get bailed out, and it's us, the public, that ends up paying the bill for it. And I will say, this is necessary. I hate to say it, but I look at President Trump as a change agent. It is his job to take us from this system into the next crisis. Whether he's still around to take us fully into the next system or not, we'll find out. But he's just doing his job. Well, we have to do our job. We cannot be dependent upon the system to take care of us. And you can look at other countries that are going through hyperinflation, and you see that 80% of the population on average ends up in abject poverty. And so we really work hard to promote local communities, because you need to create surety. Food is the single biggest issue for most people in these transitions. And I think it should be pretty obvious right now that food is a big problem for a lot of people when you have to take your weekly grocery bill and break it into 4 easy payments. I mean, that is really, really scary that people are having trouble feeding their family. So if you come together in community, you can create that surety in food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation. Communities arguably the most important, as well as shelter. And globally, this is the best opportunity that I have ever seen to get sound money back in the system again. But this is a global issue. We have to do this on a global basis, and it must be redeemable, because that's the only way for the public to take their power back. We can go into a cryptocurrency. Let us have a part of that, a percentage of it, 40%, 60%, whatever, that is redeemable gold, so that if you, the public, do not like what you're seeing, you simply go in and say, I want my gold. You can keep the rest of that crap because it's garbage anyway. Give me my 40% or whatever that percentage is. That's the only way that we're going to take our power back, is if we have the ability to do that. And I think we do.
Well, and of course, community, that's one of the key themes that we talk about, I think, every time that we meet. And It was something that I wanted to bring up with you today. I know you're traveling, you're having conversations with all kinds of different people.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if there are what is the trend looking like to you? Are people starting to move more in the direction of, yes, I need to do this, I need to have my gold and silver and all the other items on your checklist?
Well, I'll tell you, it's really interesting because I just got back from doing the Nomad Capitalist Live event, and it was a phenomenal event. And I talked about what I talk about with you, and I showed the charts and all of this. And this was not an audience that was familiar with me or my work at all. And afterwards, I was kind of mobbed, and the response was, I knew things didn't really feel right, but I couldn't connect the dots. And here you're showing me the charts from the Federal Reserve, and it makes so much sense. So people are starting to wake up, but at the same time, I can see the importance of having a plan C. Because I have a plan A here in Phoenix. I'm on an urban farm. I generate my own food and water and all of that. I have a plan B, which is 2 hours away, and I have a bug out location that's completely off grid and large enough to support a community. But I don't think a plan B is enough anymore. I think I'm looking, and that was one of the things that my takeaway from this event was to have an additional place to go with a second citizenship or third citizenship, because this is a global issue and it's going to get very, very, very nasty. And we have to be prepared for that. And I don't know. I mean, the world has never really gone through a global hyperinflationary event and reset before. It's gone through individuals, and it's going through it in a lot of places right now. But on a global basis, we went through a global depression in the 30s, and we didn't even have technology to spread it that quickly then. Now we do. And this, I think, is going to look like a wildfire, and it's going to catch a lot of people off guard. And, we traveled through Cambodia afterwards and speaking to a lot of local people, and even going to the Money Museum, which was so interesting because you could see the central bank propaganda, right? And at one point, gold and silver was part of every country's money. It's just what you used to buy things. And people really, the normal person really has no clue. And like I was talking to a guide and I was talking about inflation. Oh, inflation's not that bad here, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, tell me something, because coconuts are quite big there, right? They use them a lot. I said, well, how much did that coconut used to cost you? And he goes, well, in 2019, that coconut cost 1,000 rupiah or whatever they use dollars there too, but whatever their currency is. And he goes, now they're 4,000 rupiah. I said, well, has the coconut changed? Are you using it any different than you did before? No. So what's changed? It's the purchasing power of this stuff that changes. Right? It's not the gold going up. I have a necklace that I've probably worn with you, and I bought it in 1987. And it's a gold necklace. And I remember at the time I paid $350 for it. And I recently had it appraised at like $6,500. Now, most people go, wow, and I even saw you look on your face like, wow, that's really good. But it's not the gold going up. It's the value of the dollar going down. And what that gold necklace did was it held my purchasing power intact. Does that make sense?
It does. And you have to shift your mindset, but that it makes total sense. And just going back to your comments, so plan A, plan B, and now thinking about plan C, which could include another citizenship or something of that nature. Is there anything else you would add to that plan C category? Because it worries me a little bit to hear you talk about going beyond even a plan B.
I honestly never thought that I would feel this way. And I was very, very comfortable. In fact, I'm getting to go to my bug out this weekend. I can't wait because I truly love it there. But, and I'm learning about this. I'm learning about all of it. So kind of stay tuned, because it's not like I necessarily know what I'm doing. However, I would say that Andrew and his team over at the Nomad Capitalist, this is what they do, and they're quite brilliant at it in all the tax ramifications, legal ramifications, what it takes and where you might feel comfortable, which I don't know yet where I'm going to feel comfortable. So stay tuned on that. Maybe we can talk about it more the next time we meet, when I'll have a little bit more experience and understanding myself under my belt.
Yeah, I would love to hear more about how you work through that process. It's definitely interesting. So we'll check back in on that one next time we talk for sure. And so that the community angle, that's been a theme in many of our conversations. Yes. I want to go back to some of our other topics from that January conversation and see how things have developed. You had mentioned we were heading toward a battle royale, and this was not just between Trump and Powell, but also between the markets and the Fed. And so I want to check back in on those items, maybe starting with Trump and Powell and how that relationship has been playing out and the concerns we're seeing now about Fed independence. What is your take there?
Exactly. I mean, I'm not so sure that the Fed has ever truly, and actually I did a study on this, the Fed has never truly been completely independent, right? And there's such a parallel between when Nixon took us off the gold standard and Fed Chair, oh God, I had his name in my head and then it just Burns, and it went out, where he pressured Burns into lowering the interest rates. So there was more money in the system. When they drop the interest rates, that's inflationary. That is currency debasement. Because of re-election and different things that he wanted to do, and President Trump's pressuring Powell to do the same thing, which, okay, we got a quarter of a point, but really that's about currency debasement, and I see an awful lot of parallels there. I do question what's been happening since January is more of President Trump's people have become part of the FOMC, and there's more pressure for that. Even so are you ready for hyperinflation? Because that's the Fed's job, is to regulate the rate and speed of inflation. But they are absolutely losing control. And we talked about the markets and the Fed. Well, what are the markets doing? They're pushing the long rates up, right? So the markets, the bond vigilantes, right, are saying, nah, there's something squirrely here in the price of money, because that's what interest rates are, right? The interest rates are supposed to indicate the value of the money, and they're pushing them down. So the markets are stronger than the Fed. The Fed can control the overnight rate, but they can't control the market rates. And I think doesn't it look like we're in the middle of a battle royale?
I would say yes, it does. That was a good call all the way back then. And I'm wondering if you can say anything further about how this might play out. So we've got Powell's term is going to expire next year. It doesn't, well, maybe he will be fired. I guess we can't say, but it looks like maybe he'll just ride it out. We'll see. I'm wondering, do you have any idea on who may be brought in? And of course, President Trump wants to see interest rates go down further. What could be the trajectory there? What are you thinking?
Well, there are a number of people that he wants to put in that position, and I'm certain that will happen. I think if he doesn't quite honestly, if you look at how blatant everything is, I don't even know if he did an outright firing that the stock market would still go up, because we're in the melt-up phase. And it's sort of like a ho-hum kind of thing. Do I really think the Federal Reserve is necessary? I do, until we go into this new system. If we can go back on some level of a gold standard, then we don't need him. But again, I think President Trump is a change agent. I believe that is what his job is to change this system. And he's certainly doing it on so many levels. And it isn't even that I mean, corporations have been in this since the beginning. It was corporate debt that was turned into Federal Reserve notes. I mean, I have the hard evidence of that. I know it sounds outrageous, but it isn't. And now it's corporations that will be issuing the new money, the stablecoins. And that's all digital. And that gets us into the surveillance economy. And who benefits from that? Anybody but the public. The public does not benefit from a full surveillance economy because that gives the government and the corporations the power to say, there's only one way to think, and it's how we want you to think. And if you do not think that way, then you are out of the system. That goes back to the importance of community with a foundation of sound money. You need your independence.
100%. Yes, we do. And on the note of the Fed, I think one more point here I wanted to bring up. So previously, a lot of focus from the Fed on inflation, trying to get back down to that 2% level, which seems to have now been abandoned. And the shift in focus is over toward the labor market, which just seems very hard to unravel with the constant readjustment in the data that we get. And now also with the government shutdown, I don't think we're even getting all the proper numbers that we would need. So when you look at the labor market, what are you seeing there? Anything you can unravel for us?
Yes. I mean, we weren't getting good data when it was fully staffed. Then we stopped getting even reasonable data. And now we basically have no data. We are flying, a 727 without any radar at all. What could go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? Looking at all of the federal employees that have been furloughed and the discussion right now, I don't know how it's going to come out, whether or not they're going to receive back pay or they're not going to receive back pay. And then what is that domino effect of all of this in the labor market? We are a consumer-driven economy. If people can't get credit, they can't consume because they're so overwhelmed with debt. And it's not just the labor market, it's the BLS on the inflation numbers. You're not going to get any good numbers out of the BLS. I mean, they were barely good before when they were fully staffed and gathering data. I don't know where you can get a loaf of bread for $1.87, but okay. And I mean, it was bad before. Really, we're flying blind, and that's dangerous because we're driving off a cliff, but we don't know exactly where that cliff just is. And what are you going to do when you're free falling? You better have your parachutes. And that's what community is and sound money is. And I appreciate so much you talking about the community because it was September 2023 when all of a sudden I knew I was at an event and I threw all my work away and I said, we got to talk about community. And even though that was part of the mantra, that's when I realized that it needed to be the thing to discuss. I needed to bring people locally as well as globally together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love to see your changing thought process. I think that's so important to work through and bring to everybody. And as we're getting toward the end here, we spent a lot of time talking about gold and silver. They give you options. We also, right now, we've got gold and silver prices running. We also are seeing moves in platinum and palladium. And I don't know if I've ever asked you about them, but of course they're precious metals. They're kind of like silver and they've got their industrial side as well. Would you put them in the same group as gold and silver where they are metals that people should consider owning?
Well, I don't think it's horrible to own them, but this is a currency life cycle issue. And therefore, the two monetary metals are the primary is gold and the secondary is silver. So, I mean, I think this is platinum. I own some platinum. It's more rare than gold, but to your point, Charlotte, those are industrial metals. And we are headed and I think we've already started in there. That's been a little while now, where we've entered the hyperinflationary phase of this. And so how is that going to hit the global economy? So I stick with gold and silver for that function, and you can do it in any form at all. These are just sterling silver stuff, iced teaspoon, chopstick, any form. Gold and silver at their base are monetary. So that's, I think, really an important point.
Well, and I always like that you bring up different ways that you can do this so it's so accessible no matter what point you're at. All right, this has been really good. You've left us, as always, with so much to think about. Before I let you go, though, any final thoughts that you would leave people with at this time?
Wow, probably about the same one, which is stop procrastinating. Because while I can't tell you that things are going to explode on Tuesday at 7:35, they could. Are you ready for that? Because the time to get prepared and in position is before you need to be prepared and in position. At least I have a plan B, and I have my sound money platform, and I have my community around me. And that means that if it's a 2:30 on Tuesday afternoon that all Hades breaks loose, I got a place to go, I got food to eat, and I'm surrounded by a group where we can all support each other to get through this. So stop procrastinating. Really work hard to build that local community. Go to a farmer's market, go to a community garden, volunteer some of your time. You'll create those relationships. You'll create those communities and accumulate physical gold and silver. We execute a strategy based on the historic norms. I think it's really important to understand history because it gives you a view into what is the next most likely outcome. But stop procrastinating and don't be blinded by these intangible markets going up. The real trend is in the purchasing power. They're touting the devaluation. Oh my God. When I saw that, I lost it. I pretty much lost it. I went, they're telling you. And like my mother always used to say to me, when somebody tells you who they are, believe them. I believe them.
Well, perfect note to end on. I think, again, as I mentioned, so much for everyone to think about here, and hope to have you back soon to discuss developments. Always great to have you.
I am always happy to be with you, Charlotte. Thank you so much.
Thank you as well. And once again, I'm Charlotte McLeod with investingnews.com, and this is Lynette Zang.
Thank you for watching. If you like this video, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We'd also love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a comment below.